This week you have a homework assignment. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you to go out and start a fight with a total stranger like Tyler Durden. Though I can't guarantee what I'm going to ask you to do won't result in a fight. Regular listeners will know that I oscillate between black-pilled fatalism on the one hand and positing ways in which we can fight back against the machinations of the World Economic Forum, seeking to enslave us by way of the Great Reset, which will be effected through the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. I'm trying to stay focused on the latter. History shows us that tyranny inevitably implodes and the human spirit triumphs. Thus, we will find a way through this latest bout of totalitarianism, but it will get rough in the interim. I see no evidence of any course correction from our ruling elite, only doubling down and entrenchment. It can only be a matter of years or months until the next crisis, most likely financial in nature, the beginnings of which we can already see, and the solution to which will no doubt be CBDCs, central bank digital currency, programmable digital money controlled by the government. Now this will be followed by another pandemic-type event through which the digital ID infrastructure set up to enable the CBDCs will be used to facilitate a hardline public health dictatorship. It's difficult to tell exactly what role the rapidly accelerating evolution of AI will play in all this. I don't think it'll be a positive one. But assuming we can find a way of mitigating its power and misuse, the problem that remains is a relatively simple one: the age-old struggle of the people against those who seek to oppress them. The answer? Knowledge. Awareness. Once enough people see what's going on, then the game is up. Unfortunately, most still have faith in the system, believe what they're told by the corporate media, and see our governments as legitimate. This ends the moment a plurality of people refuse to play ball. What would happen, for instance, if you and I stopped paying our taxes tomorrow? We'd be crushed by the state. But what would happen if millions stopped paying? The system would fall. And if the system is about to fall anyway, being deliberately managed into calamity so that the elites can profit from the chaos, then why not seize the initiative? I understand if my ideas are too revolutionary for you. I myself was opposed to the notion of radical change for most of my adult life, and to a certain extent I still am. I do believe we may still have a chance at reforming the system back to something resembling the world many of us grew up in, one of limited government, fiscal responsibility, national sovereignty, and sensible regulation designed to reward and protect the productive working classes, rather than ideological hogwash that divides and neuters people and benefits only the super rich and those with their hands on the levers of power. If we are to reform things, then we must begin with ESG. Environment, Social and Governance is a corporate credit score system devised at the WEF and UN that rewards companies for prioritising wokeness. It is enforced by BlackRock and the other asset management firms by withholding investment capital from businesses that don't meet all the right criteria: carbon offsetting, hiring of minorities, ensuring equal gender balances on boards of directors, etc. Such metrics have zero correlation with profitability, yet they are enforced at the highest levels of global finance and government in blatant violation of fiduciary responsibility, and the effects of this dogmatic zealotry trickle all the way down to the lowliest consumer. As I said in my previous discussion of ESG, linked in the description, this cancer is in everything now, and it not only threatens to consume our economic system by replacing meritocracy and free exchange with neo-Marxism, but it lays the groundwork for totalitarian world government. If you're not up to speed on ESG yet, you might want to check out my previous 2 videos on the subject, both of which I've linked in the description. You should also pay attention to what Vivek Ramaswamy has to say on the matter. I've clipped 2 short but insightful segments on ESG from his recent appearance on Timcast IRL and linked them in the description. And I also recommend getting a copy of his book, Woke Inc., Inside Corporate America's Social Justice Scam. If you fancy a deep dive into the subject, you can't really do better than James Lindsay's lecture series on the Marxist roots of DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion, which are the functional tendrils of ESG. There are 3 episodes, and I've linked them all in the description. They're also available on Spotify and other podcast platforms. ESG underpins every abuse perpetrated on the free peoples of the West in the name of sustainability, diversity, and tolerance. If you've been the victim of racism at work through the application of the concept of white privilege by way of a cultural sensitivity workshop, that's down to ESG. If you didn't get a pay rise because your employer is spending millions instead on carbon credits to offset its supposed contribution to the imminent end of the world, that's down to ESG. If you've felt violated at having to hear about the sex lives of LGBTQIA+ people in your office through educational HR modules, that's down to ESG. And the list goes on. But it doesn't end there. ESG also enables more pernicious abuses that ostensibly have nothing to do with diversity, equity and inclusion. Consider this. During the pandemic, vaccine mandates were enforced largely not by governments, but by the private sector. Take your average publicly traded corporation. It might even be one that you work for. But for the purposes of this example, we'll create an imaginary company. A company that might exist. Acme for short. Chances are BlackRock has a significant ownership stake in Acme. Along comes the big scary COVID virus. But hey presto, Pfizer has a vaccine. BlackRock also owns 8% of Pfizer. So the more Pfizer jabs get into the arms of Acme employees, the better it is for BlackRock. Okay, so what's all that got to do with ESG, you might ask? Well, you know that G in the acronym? It stands for corporate governance. You know, things like how well a company ensures the health and well-being of its employees by providing things like free vaccines, or indeed enforcing them during a global public health crisis. It's nothing so cartoonish as some shadowy figure from BlackRock showing up at Acme and saying, "Listen here, to safeguard our other investments, you need to mandate the COVID jab for all your workforce, and you will comply or we'll crush you." It's just that Acme's directors know that if they fail to meet the criteria for good corporate governance as part of their ESG commitment, then they won't get any more of that good BlackRock money, and whoops, Acme's share price goes down the toilet. This then has a chilling effect on entire sectors and trickles down to smaller businesses who fear ostracization and cancellation of contracts unless they too fall into line. So you see, it's quite possible that if you or someone you love were forced to take the COVID jab by your employer, or, God forbid, by it, then this is likely a result of ESG. Okay, are you sufficiently pissed off? Good. Now go out and have at least one conversation with someone about ESG this week. Pick someone who probably has no clue about this stuff. That part's not hard. Most people don't. Pick someone you know and care about, not just some rando on the street. Make sure it's not someone who could make your life tough for you if they happen to have a violent reaction to your crazy conspiracy theories. Your boss, for instance, is probably not the place to start. Most importantly, though, pick someone who's likely to be receptive, someone smart who you think might be persuaded to take a look behind the curtain, and then hopefully spread the word further. Brush up on the ins and outs of ESG if you need to. The resources I mentioned before are a good place to start. And then when you do have the conversation, keep it light and casual. Don't unleash a barrage of invective against BlackRock and the WEF and start ranting about Marxism or anything like that. Just ask a simple question like, did you know that your retirement fund actively allocates your money to companies that prioritise woke ideology over profit? Again, this is not a stretch, because virtually all retirement funds do this. Don't feel like you've failed or wasted your time if the person is unreceptive. The natural response to such information is to reject it out of hand, because it challenges structures that people have been taught to trust and revere. What's important is planting the seed. This way, the next time they hear about ESG, they're more likely to be curious and explore further, because they've already been primed for the topic by someone they trust and respect. If you don't feel ready to have one of these conversations, that's cool. But I encourage you to read up further on the subject so you can begin to wake others up. Get excited about it, because this ESG thing is real and manifestly observable, and it affects all of us. Most importantly, though, it's a variable that we, the workers and consumers, have the power to shift. ESG is a blight on our economy, our culture, and our very lives. It is all around us, and most people are unaware of its existence, despite the fact that their retirement savings are being used to bankroll it. ESG is the principal tool of those who seek to transform our society into a neo-Marxist technocracy. But it is also their Achilles heel, because it depends on our buy-in. Whether that buy-in is informed, passive, or inadvertent, without it, ESG dies a swift and laughable death. Thus, let us spread awareness of this nefarious matrix of ideological control. Let us enlighten as many of our friends, family, and colleagues as we can. And in this way, perhaps we can reform the system before it's too late, before reaching the point of no return, and thus necessitating an actual revolution. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Please also subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on Twitter at realjjdawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab, and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.